Hello and welcome to PI Expert version 7.0. A significant improvement in this version is the ability to let you specify the winding stacking arrangements. PI Expert allows you to configure the outputs from 4 possible connections. The first is the AC stacked connection. Here, part of the turns of the higher voltage winding, the 12 volt winding, are shared with the lower voltage winding, the 5 volt winding. Both the outputs have the same return path. Thus, the lower voltage output shares all of its turns with the higher voltage output. The lower voltage winding will carry the sum of currents I1 and I2 from both the outputs. The second is the DC stacked connection. The winding turns are similar to AC stacked arrangement. However, in DC stacking, the higher output is connected to the DC side or the cathode side of the lower output. While the regulation performance can be better, this arrangement requires a larger current rating diode for the lower output, as it needs to carry the combined current of the two outputs, that is I1 plus I2. Consequently, the efficiency is also lower. The third is floating or independent outputs. Here, the outputs are galvanically isolated from one another. Each floating output has an independent return path. Unlike AC stacking, there is no sharing of turns between outputs in this case. The last option is the common return connection, and it applies only for negative outputs. If you want the return of the negative output to be the same as the return for the positive output, choose the common return option. Otherwise, choose both outputs as floating. Let's do a quick example and walk you through the process of specifying the stacking arrangements. Let's select top switch HX and the universal input voltage range. Let's specify 5 volts at 2 amps, a 12 volt at 1 amp. Let's specify a negative output, say 12 volt at 500 milliamps. You can specify this output to be a negative output by clicking this button. Finally, let's enter a fourth output as 30 volts at 100 milliamps. I am going to accept all the default recommendations the software suggests, and I am going to ask the software to go to work and present the best solutions. There. As you see, by default, the software has AC stacked the positive outputs and connected the negative output as common return. This, in most cases, is the stacking arrangement that will give you the best overall performance while requiring the least number of bobbin pins. However, there may be special circumstances where you may need to change this configuration. Here's how you do it. Go to the stacking dialog by double-clicking from the navigation tree on the left. Now, let's suppose that we need the negative 12 volt output to be galvanically isolated from all the other outputs. Click on the user entry button on the right and select floating as the option for this output. Click OK. And then click optimize again so the software can generate combinations, rank them, and present the list for us to review with this additional constraint. Now, see how the negative output is floating in each of the solutions the software has recommended. Let's do this again, and this time through the stacking dialog, let's configure all the outputs as floating. All the outputs are galvanically isolated from one another. Click OK. And now let's click the optimization button and ask the software to present solutions with these constraints. And there you have it. All the solutions with the stacking arrangement according to what we specified. All the outputs are now floating in each of the solutions. That concludes this tutorial. We do hope that this will help you in specifying winding configurations for your multiple output designs. Thank you.